The following is an email I received from a gentleman about his Dogman encounter right here in Australia. I thought I'd email you about my encounter with a Dogman 12 years ago that took place in the Cumberilla State Forest in southwest Queensland, Darling Downs region. I was a professional feral animal hunter for approximately 20 years prior to my experience with one of these Dogman creatures. I was on private property this day that backed onto the Cumberilla State Forest. I pulled up in my four-wheel drive and parked just off the track that led me into dense bushland, got my .308 rifle out and a belt of ammo and began making my way into the bushland on foot. Following a nice noticeable pig trail, I was about 50 yards in from my four-wheel drive when I started feeling strange and uneasy feeling. I noticed the bush was dead quiet. I've never had this happen to me in 20 years of being out in the bush, alone or with other shooters, so it was very unsettling. I stopped and was looking around me in a 360-degree turnaround and could not see anything. Then I heard a branch crack and looked towards the direction of this sound that came from, and at about 100 yards to the left, I saw this black mass moving. I raised my rifle to my shoulder to look at whatever this was through my scope, and what I saw was what I can now describe as a Dogman/werewolf type creature. It started snarling at me as I lowered my rifle. I thought instantly I needed to get the fuck out of here, so I turned and ran for my vehicle. Luckily I was only about 50 yards from my vehicle, so within seconds I was back to my car and I could hear this thing breaking branches and growling like something I've never heard before. I threw my rifle in the passenger compartment, keys in the ignition, and started my vehicle. I looked to the left and it was 20 yards from me. I floored it and took off down this track with me, this creature right behind me keeping pace with me up until I hit 60 kilometers an hour and I started pulling away from it. I kept my eyes on the track ahead and glancing at the rearview mirror, making sure this thing was getting further and further away from me. It gave up about 500 yards or so, but I continued sitting on about 80 kilometers an hour until I hit the main bitumen road T intersection, which was about 3 or 4 kilometers away from the site. I was white as a ghost, shaking, and just couldn't believe what had happened. No joke, this creature was about 8 foot tall, built like a bodybuilder, black shiny fur, huge head just like you see on the movies of werewolves, and it had yellow eyes which I'll never forget. The only person I ever told was my wife and YouTube. I suffered PTSD for 8 years after this encounter happened, and I gave up hunting and all activities that involved being out in the bush. Even camping in caravan parks was too much for me to deal with. It's only been in the last 4 years I've been able to get on with my life now as a dad of 3 children, and have finally got over it and have since gone fishing and camping, but I've not returned to hunting again and probably never will. I now always carry my rifle and a 12-gauge shotgun with us if we do go camping anywhere out bush, and we don't go bushwalking. If I hadn't been close to my vehicle that day, my encounter, I'm positive this creature would have got me and I would more than likely been eaten. Going by all the stories about Dogman attacks I've read about, I'm convinced the government knows about Dogman and Yowies being out there in the bushlands of Australia, but they keep it quiet, and possibly because of the general public. If the general public knew these creatures were out there, there would be no tourism industry. I believe these cryptids are in many locations up and down the east coast of Australia. I just wish more people would come forward with their encounters, because people need to know that these creatures are out there and they need to be careful at all times. Anyway, that's what happened. I still find it hard to believe that's what happened, but it was real. I have accepted it and moved on with my life. Take care when you're out in the bush, trust your gut feelings and natural instinct. So the gentleman that emailed that in to me wanted to remain anonymous, and I can understand why, but it's just interesting to know, and I have heard reports that there are dogmen in the Australian bush, and it's just another apex predator that we have to contend with when we go very remote into the deep bush. Thank you.